Welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast, the show by fans for fans of your Milwaukee Brewers.
All right, Brew fans, welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast. We're going to be talking about one of the biggest trades so far of the trade deadline season here in July, and that the Brewers were a part of that. So we'll get right into it. But Vince, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Craig. Always doing great during baseball season. How are you?
Doing great, and I just want to congratulate you for surviving the hurricane that passed through your area. That's good.
Yeah. No, it was my first hurricane. Growing up in Wisconsin, we don't really get too many of those up north. But now living here in Texas, I probably need to get used to it a little bit more. But we got a good chunk of our back fence knocked out. In fact, I even sent out a picture on our Brewers Twitter. Had the intern do it. So we got that picture out. But yeah, lost some shingles, lost a shutter or two on the front windows of the house, lost a good chunk of our fence, and lost a ton of branches. And there was some flooding on our street. So kind of wild. But fortunately, my wife and I are okay, physically, of course, and we escaped some of the heavier damage. Like some of our neighbors lost their cars, and bigger trees were just completely knocked over. So yeah, kind of a wild storm.
Any updates on your neighbor Craig Biggio?
He's actually at the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown for something this week. So he wasn't home, but he had people come and clean all that stuff up. So it is taken care of now at this point. But his tree did crash onto two cars. I don't mean to laugh. It's not funny, but it crashed onto two cars next door. It was just like perfectly positioned to do the most damage, apparently, because this big tree in his yard fell over and literally hit these two cars. I know I sent you a picture in our pre-production meeting, but it hit like flush and square on. So these two cars were pretty well destroyed.
Wow. Well, maybe you can post one of those to our Twitter feed for our fans to see. I know everyone's concerned about Craig Biggio, but luckily he wasn't home at the time. But he's one of our all-time favorites here at Brew Crew Review, and I know that your wife is a big fan too. So
she is. And in fact, he was kind of polite. I told him that I host a Brewers podcast. He saw me wearing a Brewers t-shirt in the yard one time, and he's like, he was walking past with his dog, so we got to talking. He's like, yeah, there were some Brewers teams that really played us, heads up with some heads up baseball. I'm like, Craig, you don't need to lie to me. It's okay. 2002 Brewers were probably not that tough of an opponent for you to take on. Like, you don't have to sugarcoat anything. I know what it was like in those early years of, the Brewers in the National League when the Astros were still in the NL. So it's okay. But he was trying to be nice.
All right. So the big trade, again, this came out just less than a week, I think, after there was reported that the Brewers probably weren't going to do much at the deadline except for internally. Well, they kind of struck early here in the trade deadline season. Obviously, the trade deadline's July 30th this year. July 3rd of this year, though, the Brewers made a trade, and they traded infield prospect Gregory Berrios to the Tampa Rays in exchange for right-handed pitcher Aaron Civale. Was pretty surprised by this trade and pretty much overjoyed by it, I guess, for the most part. But what are your thoughts on the trade, Vince?
I love it. We didn't give up a ton, in my opinion. I think that, it's something that we've talked about for many episodes now on this podcast. We clearly need to both. I think we still do. We still need to actually add more to our starting rotation, but we need to bolster our starting pitching. We've just been decimated by so many injuries this season that, getting some fresh arms in there, I think, is really important. And to be honest, that, in other seasons, we've been able to tap into, the random, 6th, 7th, 8th fringe starter or minor leaguer. This year we've had to do that as well, but we've kind of run through that list at this point. We've got guys who are starting in our starting rotation, like Tobias Myers, who was starting and not actually pitching that well in Double-A last year. So we've really gone through our depth at this point. So I think that getting another arm like Civale is going to be huge. And you can see from his numbers, just looking them over here from Scotty's intern handing it to me, his first start in Milwaukee went very well today. Don't want to give away the ending because we don't actually know it yet as we're taping this, but Civale himself pitched great in today's ball game.
Yeah. So no, I agree with your assessment that, well, first of all, I'm not the biggest Aaron Civale fan. However, I do think that he is a pretty solid major league, number 3 or 4 starter. The Brewers, beyond Frey Peralta, they've been having a lot of guys this year step up that, were unexpected when it comes to Conray, like you mentioned, Tobias Myers, other players, but with that being said, we just lost Robert Gasser for the year for injury. DL Hall's been on the IL for most of the last month and seems to be a little bit iffy coming back or whatever. And it wouldn't surprise me if the Brewers, handle him with kid gloves, maybe even have him pitch the rest of the year in the bullpen. So I think that the need.
Well, he just got hit hard, like literally with a ball yesterday or 2 days ago in one of his rehab starts in Nashville. I don't know if you saw that replay. But,
yeah, I did see that.
By a line drive going back to the mound. So I think that he avoided serious injuries and a fracture with that. But again, these are just like little things that continue to kind of pile on to DL Hall's season that may keep him out for a bit longer.
Yeah. So, I mean, and then we also just recently signed Dallas Keuchel. Or I'm sorry, we actually traded for him. Also, but he's basically the definition of a washed-up veteran. However, the Brewers were kind of getting desperate, and then along came this trade opportunity for Aaron Civale. I'll start by saying I think the Brewers did not give up very much for him, and no offense to Gregory Berrios, but he was ranked pretty universally between like our 20th and 30th prospect right now. Now we have a really strong farm system, and he's still a young guy that can move up that list. Could have been moved up that list pretty quickly. But with that being said, I really don't think he's a blue chip prospect by any means. And so giving him up for a first place team to acquire, in my opinion, like a middle rotation arm that can eat some innings is very valuable. So I really like this trade for the Brewers. Also, Aaron Civale just a year ago was pitching very well for the Guardians and was traded to the Rays last July for their actual #1 prospect, first baseman Kyle Manzardo. But unfortunately, he really has not done well with the Rays. And as far as the Rays fans' reaction to this trade, it's more like, okay, well, good. It's addition by subtraction. We're done with that guy. I think they were at their wits' end with him, and they knew they had some good young pitchers coming off the IL with Shane Baz, and I think Jeffrey Springs coming off soon. So they really had no place for him. And so I think it was just like a trade that was benefits both teams and the timing of it too. So I think,
and don't forget though too that the Brewers opportunity cost with Civale was way less than Tampa as well. Though I mean, like you pointed out, the Rays traded their consensus number 1 or 2 prospect last year for him. So I think the Brewers are certainly buying low on a guy with his track record, and the price of a number 3 starter, if that's what he is, continues to rise each and every season, in my opinion. So I'm glad that the Brewers are able to pull this off. And, Civale has actually pitched like a 1 or 2 starter in a couple of the seasons that he spent in Cleveland. So you don't really know, and it could be that the Brewers only use him for a couple of months here and figure out something else to do with him. But I do think that the Brewers are certainly buying low on a guy like Civale, who's had some past, measure of success.
And for a small market first place team like the Milwaukee Brewers, this salary this year is $2.3 million. So they're just going to have to handle a prorated portion of that, which they can definitely absorb. And he's also arbitration eligible all the way through next year. So I would think, I really expecting him to rebound. The Brewers work their pitcher magic on him, so to speak, and you can start to see that results already as a couple starts as a Brewer. But I think he's going to be a key addition to this club as we head into the second half. And like I said, even if things don't totally work out, a year from now, we can see where we're at a year from now as a ball club. And since, we could possibly trade him next July or whatever for probably more than we just gave up. So in essence, we're kind of renting him for free for at least a year. But if it all works out, he could be a major part of this rotation all the way through the end of next year and for a limited cost. So I'm pretty excited about the trade.
Yeah.
Really think it improves this year's team, which is great because the Brewer fans have seen the Brewers recently make trades in July while they're in first place recently that don't help the current team. And so this is kind of an opposite move of that, and it's refreshing to see that. And I think the Brewers are taking seriously that they are playing as though they're the best team in the NL Central, and they want to make sure to solidify that by strengthening their starting rotation. And I think this is a good move. And not only that, but doing it early.
Yeah,
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and like you said, it also helps for next season to have a guy like Civale in the mix at least as an option. I think it's really nice because there were a number of question marks coming into this year's Brewers starting rotation, and that's going to happen every year to some degree. But I really think that with Woodruff coming back and now Civale in the mix and some younger guys who have stepped up this year. Again, I keep going back to him, but Tobias Myers has really been impressive to me this season. The way that he's been able to transition and improve his stuff throughout the season, like in season like that, is really impressive to me. And then obviously Freddie. I mean, we've got a nice little group of pitchers, and then obviously Robert Gasser, who's hopefully going to come back in July or August. So not to get too far ahead of ourselves, we're obviously in the midst of a pennant race right now, and it's really exciting here in the 2024 season. But I'm really excited about Civale just in the sense that he's in the mix, going forward to I think be a very strong, at least back of the rotation starter for us.
No, absolutely. So no, it's an exciting acquisition, especially like I said, this was pulled off on July 3rd, more than 3 weeks before the trade deadline. And that's really important because I don't think there's going to be that many great pitchers on the trade market for contenders to go after this season. I mean, you look at the teams that aren't doing well. Obviously, we mentioned in our last podcast, Garrett Crochet of the White Sox will probably be on the block, but I'm sure he'd be cost prohibitive to the Brewers. Other guys that could have been available, like the Marlins, Jesus Luzardo is on the IL right now, so is not likely to be traded. In fact, they've even said as such. So really, there's not a whole lot of quality pitchers out there to acquire via trade. So to strike early on a team that's matching up with us on that is great. So I really like this trade.
Yeah.
And
what do you think? What do you think it would cost for the Brewers to go out and get Max Scherzer from Texas? And is that advisable? I think that the Rangers might actually have a couple pitchers that come on the block here in the next few weeks.
Oh, I mean, that would be great. Again, it just doesn't seem like a move the Brewers would like usually do, especially with his salary. Probably, unfortunately, it would be great. What they'd have to give up.
Yeah, but his salary is a lot of it's being picked up by the Mets, right? I mean, a lot of that salary is already diffused. So I think that Scherzer, in terms of financial cost and outlay, might be a lot cheaper than a typical Max Scherzer contract would look like. So I forget which, and we'd have to have our interns do some research, but I think that the Rangers are only picking up a portion of that contract, and that the Mets are picking up the bulk of it, because I think that was the deal at last year's trade deadline when Texas picked him up and rode him to the World Series.
Yeah. So to answer your question, it'd be great, but it would probably cost the Brewers something along the lines of a top 5 organizational prospect. If I had to guess, like someone equivalent to like a Tyler Black in a trade, or possibly a couple of prospects that equal that value in order to land Scherzer. So yeah, it's interesting. That'd be great, but I'm not expecting that. But yeah, he's probably one of the best veterans that'll be out there. And yeah, the Astros have turned their season around, are right in the mix of both the division, the AL West and the AL wildcard race. So any thoughts of like Justin Verlander going on the trade block if he got healthy is probably off the table. So there's not really that many veteran aces like that out there, like Scherzer. Scherzer himself is just coming off of injuries. So maybe his cost will be a little bit less than what I'm thinking. But again, I really feel like some of the contending teams like the Yankees, Dodgers, and those big market teams are going to swoop in and pay the price to either get a Garrett Crochet or pay what it takes to get Max Scherzer. So, I mean, the bottom line for a small market team like the Brewers is this Aaron Civale move probably makes the most sense, as far as what we're willing to do and what we've shown as a track record. I obviously, as a fan, you'd love to go out and get those established veteran aces to pair at this club. And I think the club deserves it. So I hopefully Mark Antanasio and Matt Arnold make wise decisions and being willing to go out and acquire such a player. But again, like I said, the competition will be tough. But I do think the Brewers are not done trading, despite what are reports out there. I think that they're still going to do some more trading, obviously, between now and the trade deadline, and I think it'll be exciting to see. The good news is it seems like our offense is fairly well set all the way around. It doesn't seem we need to add there. Our bullpen's been phenomenal, but they're showing signs of wear, and that's why I think having innings either like Aaron Civale really helps out the bullpen in general overall, and it'll help really keep some of those other guys fresh for the deep playoff or deep season playoff push, so to speak. And then there's other guys that we've been able to rely on, really been underachieving this year, like Yoel Payamps in particular. But with that being said, we're going to get our ace closer Devin Williams back in short order, as I know he just went out. It was announced today they went out on a rehab or yesterday they went on a rehab assignment. So we should get him back, I would assume, somewhat within the first 2 weeks after the All-Star break. So probably before the end of
both
July.
Ortiz and Devin are going on rehab to play for the Timber Rattlers this week, actually.
That's awesome. So I'm sure Scott and his interns will head on up there to Appleton and give us a scouting report on those and see how they're doing. But yeah,
but
awesome.
to your point though, Craig, one of the effects that we've already seen because of Civale's acquisition has been Bryce Wilson, who was such a key component of the Brewers, very successful bullpen in 2023, has already been moved back to the bullpen and is getting stretched out again as a reliever. So that I think is already a very direct impact of acquiring a guy like Civale. So that's exciting to me right there, because to me, Bryce Wilson was such a big part of, last year's success, that it's really important to keep, those guys in those roles when you can. And obviously some, injuries came up fast and furious right away this season between, Miley and Woodruff and a slew of other guys that, we needed to move them to the rotation. But I'm really glad to see Bryce Wilson back in the bullpen at this point.
Absolutely. So he's been a key member of this team in the first half and part of their success in being a first place team at this point as we enter the All-Star break. And I think as the numbers work out, it's pretty much a guarantee the Brewers are going into the All-Star break as a first place in the NL Central. And I think most fans would have not guessed that would be the case going into the season. Obviously we lost via trade our ace pitcher, Corbin Burns, going into the season, and Devin Williams was on the shelf. I think no one would have thought without those two guys that we'd be able to do what we've been doing, but we have been able to, and I think that's pretty awesome and exciting. So, all right, well, that's going to wrap up our podcast today. Thanks for tuning in, and if you want to tell everyone about where to check out our Twitter.
Yeah, let me do that. I know that our anonymous source, Tom Carter, has been managing our Twitter this week, but it's Brew Review 1 is our Twitter handle. So continue to interact with our anonymous source, Tom Carter, there. And feel free to send any questions to our co-host, Scott Bartell, Brew Review Podcasts with an S at gmail.com. And Scotty and his interns will get those questions answered as quickly as possible.
All right. Well, stay classy, Wisconsin, and go Brewers.
Stay classy. Go Brewers. Do, 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 do.